Hello and welcome to an emergency episode of Airheads, a not-so-serious look at the serious business of royal rumours, gossip and gowns. I'm Tom.
And I'm Maeve.
And, oh my god, we were just putting our weekly episode to bed last night when some major news broke.
Prince Harry and Meghan Markle have told the British tabloids that they will not be working with them ever again.
Nope.
And then further details emerged about Meghan's case against the publisher of the Daily Mail. And we said, well, we're not doing anything else, so we may as well do an emergency episode on it all.
We're recording on a Monday, so wearing our more structured workday sweatpants. But this can sometimes be a bit of a sensitive issue for some of our listeners, as we know from the last time we talked about Harry and Meghan's revised media policy and received some pretty intense criticism. But before we get into it, allow us to refer to Harry and Meghan's own stated desire not to avoid criticism or shut down conversation. So before you send us a nasty message or leave us a review calling us haters or worse, remember that a criticism of a person's work isn't the same as an attack on that person. And ask yourself, would Meghan really want you to?
No bad energy, guys. Anyway, on to the news. Sunday night, news breaks that Prince Harry and Meghan have sent a letter to the editors of the Daily Mail, The Sun, The Mirror and The Express, telling them they will not be engaging with these outlets going forward and will not offer themselves up as currency for an economy of clickbait and distortion.
Wow.
Coming in hot.
Yeah. And they continued, there will be no corroboration and zero engagement. This is also a policy being instated for their communications team in order to protect the team from the side of the industry that readers never see.
According to the BBC, when they say no corroboration, they mean that they won't even be answering calls from reporters at any of these publications going forward.
Like a total blanket ban on those particular publications.
I was reading that this letter was sent from an official Sussex royal email, which they got some heat for because they weren't supposed to be using the Sussex royal brand after the Queen had banned it, i.e. they had agreed that they wouldn't use that name anymore.
I mean, as a taxpayer, I'm absolutely livid in the middle of this pandemic that there's still an email address running with the wrong name. They talked about their support for freedom of the press. Like you, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex believe that a free press is a cornerstone to any democracy, particularly in moments of crisis. At its best, this free press shines light on dark places, telling stories that would otherwise go untold, standing up for what's right, challenging power, and holding those who abuse the system to account. It's been said that journalism's first obligation is to the truth. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex agree wholeheartedly.
It's a little bit confusing the way they say "like you" because parts of this letter read like a press release, so you're kind of thinking, is "like you" me, or is "like you" editor of the Daily Mail, The Sun, The Mirror, or The Express, which it clearly is, but there's no name on this letter, so it's a little bit confusing, but I did think it was a good way to reiterate that point. But then we go from that into another little dig when they say it is gravely concerning that an influential slice of the media over many years has sought to insulate themselves from taking accountability for what they say or print, even when they know it to be distorted, false, or invasive beyond reason. They go on, when power is enjoyed without responsibility, the trust we all place in this much-needed industry is degraded. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex have watched people they know, as well as complete strangers, have their lives completely pulled apart for no good reason, other than the fact that salacious gossip boosts advertising revenue. I feel like I can hear Harry telling me this in his own voice.
Oh, absolutely. I feel like a lot of what they're saying here is informed by his trauma and his feelings about the role the press played in his mother's death. Like, that's quite plain, I think.
Yeah, I was interested that in The Guardian's report about this letter, the report said, the move is designed to signal to the wider public not to trust any of the reporting about the couple carried by British tabloids. So clearly this letter was written with an eye to it being made public. So in that sense, you have that kind of press release quality to it. And they want to send a very clear message to readers not to believe any tabloid reporting about them whatsoever, which I think is kind of a curious move because we certainly know from interacting with Sussex fans that they don't believe anything in the tabloids, that they will dismiss, exactly as they're being told to by Harry and Meghan here, they will dismiss any tabloid reporting as untrustworthy. And on the flip side of that, then you have their critics who are, I guess, being kind of told off here a little bit. And I don't know if this is going to turn them around and make them disbelieve the reporting that they read in the tabloids at all.
Yeah, like when Dan Wootton revealed that Harry and Meghan were planning on leaving before we'd had any official statement from the royals, it wasn't a lie. It was leaked by someone. Just because we don't know how they get their information or don't like how they get their information, it doesn't mean it isn't sometimes accurate. And that's a real power that the tabloids have. It'll be hard, I think, to convince the regular tabloid readers that they're not to be trusted at all.
They do insist, though, that this move is not about avoiding criticism. And they say it's not about shutting down public conversation or censoring accurate reporting. Media have every right to report on and indeed have an opinion on the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, good or bad, but it can't be based on a lie. They also want to be very clear this is not in any way a blanket policy for all media. So I guess they're sensitive to the criticisms that they've had about how they're tarring all media with the same brush. But again, I don't know if they're going to convince their critics with this statement. I saw the Town and Country reporter Victoria Murphy, who has emerged as one of the journalists that Harry and Meghan do like working with under their revised media policy. She tweeted about this. It was obvious from the content on their website that a huge motivation, perhaps even the whole motivation for Harry and Meghan rejecting public funding, was to have control over which media had access to them. Now they are implementing their own policy. So I guess it's not a surprise, obviously, but she is kind of pointing out that they really felt a lack of control and that this was them trying to regain control almost desperately, I think, in this letter. But
they did outline who they would work with. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex are looking forward to working with journalists and media organisations all over the world, engaging with grassroots media, regional and local media, and young up-and-coming journalists to spotlight issues and causes that so desperately need acknowledging. And they look forward to doing whatever they can to help further opportunities for more diverse and underrepresented voices who are needed now more than ever. Which is absolutely true.
Yeah, and we were talking yesterday about how great it was that WeHoville, that local Los Angeles news publication, had the first details about Harry and Meghan volunteering, and we've seen that as well with some of the stuff they did in Canada. And I remember when they did that event with the veterans over in the UK, that military newspaper got the exclusive on it. So they are obviously conscious of working with local newspapers, and that's so important, especially now that so many local newspapers are shutting down and facing huge difficulties in the pandemic. So I love that they're doing that, and as well as that, working, as they say, with more diverse and underrepresented voices, because as we've seen, so much royal coverage is basically looks like it's by the same person, that white middle-class middle-aged person who have a lot of the same perspectives on these kind of stories.
If this sounds like a bit familiar, it's because they kind of already made the statement back in January on their website. So why are they saying it all over again?
I know, like, if their intent, as they explicitly say here, is to have zero engagement with the tabloids, is this letter not a kind of engagement, and does it not prolong that connection between the Sussexes and the tabloids and this idea of the tabloid war? So much of the coverage we've seen today of this story is about Harry and Meghan escalating a battle with the tabloids and really linking them with the tabloids again, which I think they could have avoided. The reason that we've been given for why this letter has come out is because the first hearing in Meghan's legal action against Associated Newspapers, which publishes the Mail on Sunday and Mail Online and the Daily Mail, this legal action, as we know, is over the publication of that private letter to her father, Thomas Markle, and the first hearing for this is going to be held on Friday by video conference. So they're kind of setting the agenda ahead of that.
Do you think that they felt like they needed some kind of official letter or document that they could point to that indicates that they don't work with tabloids or leak to them in order to, like, bolster their case?
Perhaps maybe not for this case, but maybe going forward, if they are going to continue to be very litigious with the tabloid media, it could possibly be useful to them. I don't know, maybe from a legal standpoint, I'm not an expert in this, but I can imagine that if they wanted to have something they could very clearly hold up and say, this is when we severed ties with the tabloid media, that could possibly stand to them.
A lot of the reaction to this has been quite critical of their timing, obviously with a global pandemic on, even though it's probably not the case that they wanted to take the step right now. And we've heard them say that they want to be focusing their efforts on helping with coronavirus. But the fact is that they've said this at a time where there are thousands of people in the UK dying from the virus.
Obviously, you had the likes of Piers Morgan and Dan Wootton at The Sun just howling about this and the terrible timing and how it made them look narcissistic and all this kind of stuff. But, I mean, I've even seen some Harry and Meghan fans saying that they felt pretty turned off and uneasy about the timing of this letter, that it does come across as quite self-indulgent and even tone-deaf in the midst of a crisis, that we had already known this about them, that they didn't want to work with the tabloid media, so why are they saying it again? And that maybe they should just put any and all announcements about their new life on hold until the pandemic passes.
We want more pictures of them volunteering and stuff. That's the kind of content that people are really looking for from them.
We should say that it was quite convenient that those pictures came out when they did. We heard some speculation from people that did they have a hand in the release of those pictures. Initially I thought they couldn't have, because we know how Harry feels about the paparazzi, but I'll just say that it is very handy that you have pictures of them out doing good to combat or to serve as kind of aperitif before any criticisms could settle in about them being totally focused on themselves with this statement.
And to remind us of their work ahead of this quagmire of legal talk. I suppose the counter to this idea that Harry and Meghan shouldn't be saying anything for the moment is that the tabloids haven't stopped commenting on them.
Yeah, and we're hearing from the Sussex defenders or the Sussex squad, why should Harry and Meghan have to put anything on hold when the tabloids aren't putting their stories on hold? They have every right to set these boundaries and to set them as loudly as they possibly can, which is fair enough. But at the same time, you have people like Ian Murray, the executive director of the Society of Editors in the UK, saying, although the Duke and Duchess say they support a free press and all it stands for, there is no escaping their actions here amount to censorship, and they are setting an unfortunate example. Although the couple may no longer style themselves as working royals, they continue to be high-profile public figures and indeed have made plain their intention to continue to do so. By appearing to dictate which media they will work with and which they will ignore, they, no doubt unintentionally, give succor to the rich and powerful everywhere to use their example as an excuse to attack the media when it suits them.
He continues, the truth is that Harry and Meghan have enjoyed and continue to enjoy a huge amount of positive coverage for themselves and their causes, much of it carried in the very titles they are now targeting. They may have been stung by some of the coverage they have not liked, they may disagree strongly with some elements of that coverage and can, of course, take action to answer any criticism they consider unfair or inaccurate through several channels. But the answer should never be to attempt to shun individual titles and their millions of readers.
I think that's what kind of sticks out to me about this move. Obviously, we both really respect their desire to protect their family and to set boundaries. There have been so many disgusting, racist, sexist, xenophobic, and totally untrue things written and published about the Sussexes, and in particular about Meghan, in the tabloids in the last, 3 years?
Yeah.
And we totally cheered them on when Harry released that statement about their case against the Mail on the second last day of their tour in South Africa. But I just feel a little bit hesitant to applaud this particular move. What do you think?
I'm really behind their legal battles. I really want them to win. Because I think that, winning these legal cases can hopefully get rid of some of the people in these institutions who are leading the, like you said, really horrible, racist, xenophobic coverage that they've had to deal with, and hopefully try to affect some kind of change inside these publications and the structure of them. But in comparison to the legal battles, this kind of statement strikes me as pretty unnecessary, and it's kind of in poor taste, I think.
we do obviously understand what is motivating this, something we've been talking about for months now in terms of Harry and Meghan's relationship with the press. You have to acknowledge all of Prince Harry's trauma over the death of Princess Diana. And then on top of that, you have these stories appearing in the tabloids almost daily about Harry and Meghan's new life in LA and their every move. And maybe they just want to try and gain some kind of control over that. Or maybe in Harry's case, he feels like he can finally seek vengeance on what he sees as the press's role in the death of his mother. But I think reiterating something that you've already said very clearly, to say that again in a very long and, you know, frankly quite rude public letter in the middle of a global crisis, it honestly makes you look pretty self-absorbed. And for all they say about this not being censorship, it is a form of censorship. And to argue otherwise, I think, is dishonest and unfair. And we know that Meghan's whole thing is that she wanted fairness. And of course, the tabloids aren't entitled to access to Harry and Meghan's events or interviews with them or their child or anything about them. But Harry and Meghan are still members of the royal family. They may not be senior working members, but they're still members of this very powerful institution. And as such, they deserve scrutiny.
They deserve scrutiny, but they also deserve positive coverage. Like, we love talking about the good things that they do, and we've been really big fans of a lot of their work. But there's a worry here that if they're choosing who gets to cover them, it's going to be exclusively and overwhelmingly positive. And, you know, there are important questions that might be glossed over, things like how they'll fund Archewell, their non-profit. And I'm kind of worried as well that this could lead their critics to dismiss all positive coverage of them as propaganda.
And we're already seeing that in the response from people. You know, I just wonder what the point of this was. You know, maybe it's likely that they see this as something bigger than themselves, that they are leading a war against the evils of the tabloids, that they are going to use their privilege and their status to clamp down on the most insidious tabloid practices. And, you know, we've seen over the years people calling for a moment of reckoning for the tabloids. You know, recently after the death of Caroline Flack, when Gareth Thomas was outed to his parents as being HIV positive. And then, you know, further back than that, you've got the phone hacking scandal, you've got Diana's death. You know, there's all these times where people have said the way the tabloids operate needs to change. But I am not convinced that this statement is serving that mission.
No. Not in the way that I personally think that the legal battle could.
Yeah, it's all very complicated. It couldn't be playing out at a worse time. And I don't think there are a neat answer on either side of saying this is a huge mistake or this is absolutely the smartest thing they could do right at the moment. We are, as usual, in the middle ground here. But speaking of the legal case, we've got to get on to these details that have come out about Meghan's case against Associated Newspapers, the publisher of The Mail.
Today, Monday, Byline Investigates was the first to report on Meghan's court filings in her case against A&L. We had previously talked about the publisher's defence filing, which was a 44-page document that alleged, amongst other things, that Meghan had given permission for 5 of her friends to speak to People magazine and mention a letter she had written to her father, that she intended the letter to be made public because she wrote it so neatly, and that she allowed a close friend, Jessica Mulroney, to intervene in an attempt to stop the publication of an unflattering interview with one of Meghan's old contacts, and that Meghan showed no real concern for her father or his welfare.
Yeah, I think that was back in January, and now we finally got Meghan's response, and boy, there's a lot in this. I think it's around 30 pages, according to Byline Investigates, but let's just go through some of the most notable items. So the kind of big story is that she has included a series of text messages between herself and Prince Harry and her father, Thomas Markle, in the days before her wedding, 2018, that would appear to contradict the publisher's claims that she did not ask about her father's well-being. So Harry and Meghan's wedding was on the 19th of May. On the 14th of May, Harry sends this message. Tom, Harry again. Really need to speak to you. You do not need to apologise. We understand the circumstances, but going public will only make the situation worse. If you love Meg and want to make it right, please call me, as there are 2 other options which don't involve you having to speak to the media, who incidentally created this whole situation. So please call me so I can explain. Meg and I are not angry. We just need to speak to you. Thanks. And then he goes on to add, oh, any speaking to the press will backfire. Trust me, Tom. Only we can help you, as we've been trying from day one.
I mean, first thing to note is that he spells you.
Every single time.
And that's basically the only bit of text abbreviation that he uses.
Does Meghan have an iPhone? Because you have to work pretty hard to spell out you when autocorrect really wants to spell it properly.
Yeah.
But instead of replying to Harry and Meghan's messages or calls, Thomas Markle, according to this legal document, he issued a public statement through TMZ saying that he had gone to the hospital because he suffered a heart attack, and that was apparently the first that Meghan knew of his heart attack.
We found out in this document that Meghan later messaged her father in hospital to offer her support, saying, I've been reaching out to you all weekend, but you're not taking any of our calls or replying to any texts. Very concerned about your health and safety and have taken every measure to protect you, but not sure what more we can do if you don't respond. Do you need help? Can we send the security team down again? I'm very sorry to hear you're in the hospital, but need you to please get in touch with us. What hospital are you at?
Apparently he refused the offer of the security guards, but according to the court documents, Meghan messages him again. Harry and I made a decision earlier today and are dispatching the same security guys you turned away this weekend to be a presence on the ground to make sure you're safe. They will be there at your disposal as soon as you need them. Please call as soon as you can. All of this is incredibly concerning, but your health is most important. It would be hard to argue that she has shown no concern for her father and his welfare after reading these texts, in my opinion.
In mine too. And I just keep thinking, like, God, what an extra hassle to be dealing with in the run-up to your wedding. According to the filing, Thomas Markle responded by saying he was okay, would be in hospital for a few days, and refused the offer of security, prompting pleas from Meghan to let them help, with Harry sending on details of the security team in another message sent from her phone. He loves using her phone.
So this response comes on the evening of the 15th of May, and says he appreciated their offer, but that he is not feeling in danger and he's going to recover at a motel. But within 10 minutes, Meghan is texting him again, asking for the hospital details so she knows where he is.
It's not just like, oh, are you okay? Yeah, I'm okay. It's like her wanting to know, where exactly are you? Can I send someone to like physically check in with you in a time when he could be very vulnerable?
Another interesting text we heard about in these documents is one that Meghan's lawyers suggest may have been misattributed to Thomas Markle. This text, a very emotive message, was sent from Thomas Markle's phone and subsequently appeared in various articles attacking Harry and Meghan, including one by Piers Morgan in the Mail. But Meghan's lawyers suggest that it may not, in fact, have been written by him, that it was so suspicious that Prince Harry responded to it saying, Tom, it's Harry, please answer your phone. I need to know this is actually you because it doesn't sound like you at all. And he received no response.
I like that he calls him Tom rather than Thomas, because I feel like we've had that narrative that like Harry doesn't even know Thomas Markle, they've like never met and all of that, but I like that this implies some kind of familial concern. Meghan also denies A&L's claim that Thomas Markle had tried to contact his daughter after her wedding on various occasions by phone and text, including one on November the 25th, 2018, allegedly saying, I want to reach out to you or try to reach out to you one more time. You apparently have just written me off and now it's telling me, I guess, for the rest of my life.
Yeah, she said the actual last contact she had with him was a missed call at 4:57 a.m. on the morning of her wedding, the 19th of May, but no further texts or calls from him at any point afterwards, including this message on the 25th of November. Lots of messy text drama.
Yeah, a lot of receipts.
But a large part of the newspaper publisher's defence argues that Meghan's 5 unnamed friends who spoke to People magazine were operating under her approval when they talked to the magazine and referenced her letter to her father back in February of last year. But Meghan denies any involvement in this. The legal documents say the truth is that the author, Meghan, did not know that such an interview had been given, or more importantly, that any reference would be made to the letter or the response to it. Nor was the reference an accurate one, as it plainly would have been if it had been authorised or procured by her, which it was emphatically not. So I remember when the publisher of the Mail's documents, their defence came out, a big thing was Meghan involved in that People magazine story? And we'd heard a lot of theories that she may have been, and we know that People is friendly with celebrities, so it seemed like a possible thing. She's clearly totally denying that. She had no role in it, according to these legal documents. But she does say that the Mail was the cause of any dispute between herself and her father, who she describes as vulnerable.
She says that they first harassed and humiliated him in degrading articles and then manipulated him into giving interviews, one of which he later described her as being lies and bullshit.
This is so interesting. This suggests that they have had some kind of contact since then, whether it was just with her lawyers or if Meghan and her father are speaking to each other. We don't know, but the filing does cite Thomas Markle's own version of events, which it says was contained in correspondence to his daughter. We may find out more about that. It's certainly very interesting. Anyway, his version of the events surrounding an interview that he was manipulated, quote, manipulated, into giving to the Mail Online by one of its journalists. He says the next day, the journalist announced and bragged that he got a 9-hour interview. He said a few things I said in confidence, but 85% were lies and bullshit. I called him and told him he was a thief, a liar, and a coward, and I would get even. I didn't want or intend to give him an interview, and I certainly would not do 9 hours for free.
That's an interesting line.
He also is quoted as saying, I appreciate that you have always been concerned for my health and you were trying to get me help, which seems to answer one of those claims from the defence. My favourite detail, though, in that we've heard from these legal filings is to do with the allegation that she knew the letter would be made public because she had written it so neatly and didn't make any strike-throughs or any mistakes when she was writing it. So the document says, this was the claimant's usual style of handwriting, as she had trained in calligraphy since she was at school and practiced it professionally to support her early acting career, as had been widely reported, including by the defendant, in an article published in the Mail Online on 26 November 2018.
So good.
Oh, beautiful work, Meghan.
Really excellent penmanship. All round. So the hearing is going to take place on Friday, and as we know, Harry is separately bringing another case against the parent companies of The Sun and The Mirror for alleged historical phone hacking offences. So
the case continues, and we will be staying tuned. We hope you come back and stay tuned with us. In the meantime, you can find us on social media on Instagram, Twitter and Pinterest at AirheadsPod, and on Facebook at Airheads.
If you like this episode, please leave us a 5-star review and tell a friend to counteract the very likely massive influx of 1-star reviews we're about to get.
And in the meantime, we hope you have a good week, and we'll talk to you next Monday.
Bye.
Bye.
My Instagram bio says that I am a lover of handwritten notes.